Hello and welcome to this. It's our first tips and tactics video. We've had a few messages from our new YouTube subscribers, and it's really great to get those. Thank you. People who've been looking at our battle reports and giving us some tips. Cheers for that. And some of our Patreon folks have sent some questions, and we always get stuff for the podcast as well. But one of the things people have been asking, mainly newcomers, is how would they go about selecting an army, or how do we go about it? So what we're going to do is I'm going to have a quick chat with a few different people, and we're going to tell you what we think about when we make armies. I'm no world beater, so I'm going to speak to some people who are a little bit more successful than myself. I will speak about what I do, I suppose. It's my lunch hour at the moment. I work from home most of the time, so it's quite good that I get to use my desk. Okay, so let's see. So myself, when I'm picking an army, well, I look at the models, I read the lore, I read a lot of the background stuff. So it's what grabs me narratively, or the aesthetics of the models. What do I really like the look of? And secondly, you obviously have to think about the very, very basics. You need a hero and for your general, and you need 2 battle line options. That goes without saying. So you always have to bear that in mind. Everything else kind of works around that. What I do is I read all of the war scrolls first of all, and then I look up what's battle line. So I get an idea, a general idea of what everything can do. You can do that through the app. You don't even have to buy the books, and the General's Handbook tells you what's battle line and what isn't. So you don't even really have to invest in anything at that point. And then I suppose the main thing I do when and this is by no means the only way, but what I do, and it's based on old school stuff back from 8th edition and previous. I mean, I suppose any tactics. I always think to have at least one big unit for holding objectives, that I always include in every army. I have to have something, be it a unit of 30 dryads or 40 skeletons or a block of 12 ogres, whatever it is. I have my anchor or my anvil or whatever you want to call it. And then I try to have 2 units that do the damage. 2 things that can really pack a punch that people are going to be scared of, not just one. You have to have a bit of redundancy just in case. I then look for mobility. That's my main thing. That's my reach. You always have to have a way to get across and to take the fight to your opponent. And with me, I try to use mobility, or some way to deploy in a non-conventional or a sort of game mechanic altering way, or redeploy, like using grave sites, using ambush for Legion at Night, or using woods to either deploy in the woods or to teleport through the woods, or some kind of a deep strike ability. I always look for that personally. That's how I get my reach. And then nowadays you need at least one resilient hero, preferably more, because of the hero missions. I suppose what I tend to do is, once I've looked at all that and I've got these ideas that I'm thinking through, I look at the War Scroll synergies. Things like I keep focusing here on Death. It's because I've played it for the last couple of years mainly. The White King and Death Rattle forces, or the Vampire Lord, and well, anything. Given the extra attacks, War Chanters and things for the Iron Jaws. And then as I've done that and I've kind of got to grips with what there is there, I then look at the battalions. The battalions are key. I mean, they give you extra artifacts, they reduce your drops. They are a cost, but they generally enhance your army in some way and allow you to play in a specific style. You can generally pull one out of each army book that's good to how your natural play style is. And the same with things like temples or legions or whatever it is, the different factions within a book as well give a different tweak to play style. So you'll generally find something that's suitable for yourself. So I try to look for a battalion myself. I try to look for a battalion that also includes the battle line. So it's 3 battle line for most tournaments, because you're up to a 2,000 point game. So it's not just the 2 battle line that you'll need for a Vanguard mission for the 1,000 points. So you're looking for something that's got, well, preferably a hero and 3 battle line, because that's the general structure to an army. Something like the Forest Folk for the other one, the Spite Revenants one, the Outcasts for Sylvaneth, that I tend to use. Either of those two satisfies the battle line criteria. One of them has a hero. It's not a very resilient hero. It can do some good stuff in that it can summon in additional units, so it's got a place. Or when I'm playing my death armies, I always use the Death March, which has all your battle line in the form of the skeletons. It has your mobility from your Black Knights. It has a bit of a punch from your Graveguard, and it has a resilient hero in the White King. That's kind of my play style in a nutshell. It's why I've played it for so long. I suppose then, once I've looked at the different battalions and I've hopefully chosen one that it's got models I like, it's got a bit of background I like, it ticks some of my boxes, I then look to fill in those gaps. So I'm looking for my anvil unit. If there isn't one in a formation in the book, this is where I look to try and find it. You're always going to need something to hold your home objective where you want to be strong. Something that most people will even go and fight because they know it's not going to end well. It's something that's a tar pit or they're just going to break on. I'll then look for my fast objective grabbers, as I spoke earlier about the Black Knights. I mean, Black Knights in Death are great. They've got a 12-inch move. If they're part of a Death March, you get an extra 4 inches on it. 16-inch move is good, especially now you can command point to make the Morto run 6, so you can really get somewhere to an objective, get yourself onto cover, waiting for a charge into you, or use them as a you can White King them to up their attacks by 1. You can Vampire Lord them for another. You can Van Hels them. You've got 5 attack knights, 3s and 3s, doing 2 damage on the charge, attacking twice, so 10 attacks each is massive. So you're looking at things like that, or something that's fast that's going to get your objectives. You're looking for that punch, as I said earlier. Like people might call it the hammer or your mailed fist or whatever it is, but you're looking at something that you're going to really be able to identify their threats and deal with them, something that you're comfortable with. Personally, I look for a way to control movement. So, as I said earlier, some kind of teleportation or some kind of an out of the ordinary movement mechanic. That's the way I play the game. I play the game through movement. It's all about shenanigans to capture objectives, or to block people off screen things, or to appear where I'm not wanted or not expected. It's all that's my play style. For me, magic or shooting, I mean, it's viable. I just don't tend to use it. I prefer to, as I say, have mobility, move things, block things, screen things. One thing that once you've decided the sort of army you want and how you're going to play with it, you have to know what you can handle. You're not going to be able to handle everything, so you need to know how you can. You need to have a strategy for it. So it might be building your army so that you know you've got priority. So you might be able to alpha strike, or you might want to, block line of sight somehow. So be that through a spell that you take, or an ability, or Wildwoods, or whatever that is, so that you can sort of mitigate in any kind of susceptibility to shooting, or have ambush as an option. Things that are going to just switch the dynamic, so that people that they've built their armies and their strength is going to be neutralised slightly. And then the main thing you do is you play with that army. I don't like switching armies. It's been a bit of a challenge for me doing these battle reports and moving from one army to another. If I build an army, I tend to like to play at least 5 games with it before I switch anything out even. And then I like to just practice and tweak and evolve it and play it for at least a year. I don't often jump between armies. I'm not that sort of a player. I tend to take pretty mediocre armies. I do perform above average with them, but that's mainly because I play them so much, so I know, I just instinctively know how to deal with them. So my main advice is to, once you've picked it, play it, and don't be demoralised if the first 3 games you lose horrendously. Just learn from what's gone wrong, try to avoid it in future, take note of what goes well, and build on that. You're never going to really know how successful or how strong an army is from just a couple of games. So stick with it. Anyway, that's how I go about building my armies, and that's just fits in with my play style that I've been playing for quite a long time. But we're going to speak to a few other people, from the hobbyist through to the really successful, and see what takes they have and any advice they have. Really just see what process they go through to pick their own army. Hope you find it enjoyable, and if there's anything you want us to talk about in future, just give us a shout. Send us a message. You can send us messages through the Patreon site. You can send them through Twitter. I'm at AoS Batrep. You can send them to our Gmail for the Northern Invasion podcast, which again is aosbatrep@gmail.com. Or through, I don't know, things like Podbean and things for our podcast, or we have a Facebook page, which is, I think if you just search at Batrep, that covers it. I think it's called Age of Sigmar Battle Reports. But the easiest way is probably through Twitter or YouTube now. YouTube things, the messages bing up, so I generally answer them as soon as they come through. Anyway, let us know. Keep listening, and if you're not already doing it, there's a bell somewhere and a subscription button. Hit those and let us know what we're doing right, and steer us around the things we're doing wrong. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I've already done a quick intro, and I've basically talked about what I do when I pick lists, which is probably a lot different to others. So what I've decided to do is to speak to a couple of different people, from the hobbyist to the more successful matched play sort of player. And so for everybody who's watching, this is Nathan. Nathan's one of the original and long-standing co-hosts of our Northern Invasion podcast. Hi, Nathan.
Hello.
And Nathan was the inaugural Northern Master.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to get that.
Lucky. It's all about the eels. The eels.
It was with the eels.
Yeah.
Wasn't exactly an original list, but I don't think it had really seen tournament play at that point. But no, that was an interesting list.
Yeah, I think I had the pleasure of playing it.
You did.
With my first ever game using Sylvaneth.
Yep. That was a different list though. That was at Tempest, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I had a nicer list then.
Well, I found it quite challenging. But it was the first time I used Sylvaneth, and I learned a lot from that game. So anyway, I suppose the main question, the thing that was posed, we've had quite a few people. It's quite interesting, the different dynamics of people who watch the YouTube stuff to listen to the podcast. I think that from the questions and the comments we get, I think maybe the people who listen to the podcasts are more heavy-going tournament players, whereas the people who are watching the YouTube are obviously just into the battle reports, and we seem to be getting quite a few new people.
Yeah.
And we've had a few questions about how we go about picking lists, so I thought it'd be pretty good to do that. So maybe over to yourself and let you just tell us what you think.
Yeah. So I'm of the opinion that you don't necessarily need to be an outright filth monger to put together a competitive list that can compete on the top tables. In fact, I would even go as far to say that all of my lists are holding back in some ways. Like a lot of them, I don't ever go for the pure efficiency, because a lot of the lists I like to put together have symmetry, and I like to have like a big kind of centerpiece for my armies. I like to make sure that they look good, but I also test lists a lot, probably a bit more than a lot of the people we play with up in Scotland do anyway. I think a lot of people write a list, they buy a list, they play it, and then they take it to a tournament, whereas I'll play maybe 10, 15 iterations of a list before it gets to a tournament. And it's all little things that I change, but I've got a bit of a recipe for it, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about the Legion of Chaos Ascendant list I took to Onslaught, because I think that's probably one of the first outright original lists that I've taken to a tournament. Somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago what would be a good way to get better at writing lists, and I said just copy other people's lists for like a year, play with them, win with them, lose with them, and then you can start to write your own lists that kind of do what those lists do, because you'll understand why those lists done well in the first place. And I think I've kind of cracked the recipe for it, at least what works for me. It's not what works for everybody, but the recipe is bodies for the objective. All the objectives, you need to have models in the circle, otherwise you don't score points. You need to have movement, so either something that moves fast, something that can run in charge or retreat in charge, something that can fly, or a teleport, and then reliability. So taking as many dice rolling situations out of the game, where something just happens, or if you need to have a dice roll, it needs to be 50-50 at best. I don't like to go for anything that's worse than a 50-50 for a list strategy. So I don't know if I can pull this up on the screen or if you'll attach it to the video or whatever, but the Legion of Chaos Ascendant list. The first thing that I wanted in this list was a unit of 30 Plaguebearers, just because it was a big block unit, and it's -2 to be shot, -1 to be hit in combat. It's durable, it's got a 5+ after save, and it's going to do the whole getting the bodies in the objective to score the objective. The next thing was Kairos and Bellacor, 2 massive control pieces where you don't need to roll a dice for their ability to work. Bellacor picks a unit at the start of the game, and that unit needs to roll a 5+ to do anything until the next hero phase. So that's taken the dice rolling aspect away from me and putting it on someone else. Like, I've decided what unit I want to control. Kairos can change the dice roll for an opponent's charge. It can change the dice roll for an endless spell that I want to get off, for a run roll if I'm out of command points. Anything that is going to get me points on the objective or keep me alive for an extra turn. And then the speed and the movement aspect was Kairos Fireborn, which a lot of people hadn't really counted on. Like, they're not traditional demon models, they're in the Forge World kits, but they have run and charge, they fly, they're ethereal, and because they're demons, they get the demon after save in my army. So I was able to, in a couple of games, run out, tag something in combat by like charging into them and then not dying. And then that holds up a whole portion of my opponent's army for a turn or two while they deal with that, and they're not scoring objectives with those models. So that's the recipe that I found works for me. Mixed arms, does a little bit of everything. As long as the little bit of everything is those things: bodies on the objective, something that moves fast, and reliability. Just a really efficient army with what it does. Doesn't necessarily need to be efficient points wise. Kairos is a lot of points, 400 points. But if you can build a way to protect him by giving him a 5-up accuracy, which he doesn't normally have access to, then you can get the efficiency back. You might not necessarily be getting it paying for the unit. So another list you can look at that does it the other way is 27 eels. I've played it at Masters last year. Didn't really work for me. It was a strong army and I felt strong using it, but it was just all eggs in one basket, pure efficiency. Everything in the army is really cheap for what it does, but it didn't do enough of everything, which is what I tend to like to do with my lists. I need to have either a bit of shooting or a bit of magic, a bit of control, not just outright blast your opponent off the table. But I think playing net lists isn't a bad thing if you want to get better at the game and better at writing your own lists. So I wouldn't discourage anybody from playing net lists. It's what I did. It's what I know a lot of people do that are successful and get wins. If you ask Liam, which I'm sure you will at some point, I'm pretty sure that's what he'll advocate, because he's done it to great effect for a long time. And I would never take that away from someone, because you learn a lot playing a list that somebody else has done what I did with this list, and try it, tweak it, and put something that's going to really perform on the table.
Yeah. So do you, when you're thinking about it, obviously you're thinking about what you need to, what they need to do in terms of mobility and objective grabbing and things. How much does the what you think you're going to come across at an event shape what you pick?
Definitely does. So the reason why I wanted the Kadai to be able to run forward and tag something was because there's things like eels in the game that when they charge you, they have bonuses to hit. There's things that when they get across the table and get into my 30 Plaguebearers can do damage. That's probably why I've got Kairos and Bellacor in the army, because I want to control my opponent. So I was thinking about the outright offensive nature of the meta that we're currently in, where there's a lot in the game that can just blow you out of the water super fast. And that's why I decided to take the control aspect into the lists that I've been writing. You can't compete with some of these armies that just outright damage you off the table. My army doesn't do a lot of damage. It does scalpel damage. You can point at something and do a lot of damage to that one thing, but it doesn't have outright offensive power like eels or Daughters of Cain Witches or Flamers of Tzeentch in Eternal Conflagration. It doesn't have that kind of power, but it can hold on to it, can make that power not do what it wants to do, which I think works better for me. Like, I like the control element of games. When I played Tzeentch Change Host, it was a very control army. It was the old Change Host, so you could split into units to stop them moving, and I just loved that aspect of the game. I did it with Death as well before it got FAQ'd. You used to be able to regrow your units within 3 of enemy models and hold them in place, stop them charging, stop them moving. For me, I think that if you've got somebody that knows what they're doing with an offensive army, can probably beat a control army. But otherwise, if they don't know, if they don't get the math right, the person playing the control army is probably going to win out, because they've planned for the damage that's coming in. So I think that you've got to take into account the meta when you're writing the list, definitely.
Yeah, and like
the only way you do that is by playing games. You've got to play test your army.
And developing a play style, I suppose. You just said there about some people, I suppose, are more comfortable with a controlling or a defensive army, whereas some people are all in aggro.
Yeah.
And I think only with playing different armies that you realise what suits your play style best.
Definitely. Like, that's another reason for advocating net lists. Like, I went to Facehammer a couple of years ago, and I never got the pleasure of playing them then, but I saw Dave Kane from Northern Ireland fame. He's playing Caradron Overlords and doing really well right now. He was playing his Legion of Blood list with Neferata, the 2 dragons, the Bloodseeker Palanquin. It looked awesome on the table, which was what first drew me in, but then I started hearing stories about how he was blowing off 90 witch elves in 2 or 3 turns, just like absolutely tabling people with it. I was like, that sounds really cool. I'd been playing a Nagash Death Army and not doing anywhere near that amount of damage, and I thought I'll take it for a spin. Did all right with it.
The doppelganger.
The doppelganger, doppelganger cloak, Rend 3 blade on the other dragon, like it was serious damage in combat. Like it was nothing compared to the damage now, but back then that was really good. It wasn't my playstyle.
I remember you talking through it on one of the podcast episodes, and I was like, it's only 90 wounds. It's that good. And you're like,
it was less than that.
You get an extra 3d6, you get this back, the other, and then I'm getting to go first. People can't hit me, and I saw you actually doing it, and most people didn't get a second turn.
Yeah, I tabled a Blight Cyst back then by turn 3 or something. It was mental damage, but like I've played maybe another style that I've developed towards is Monster Mash armies, because I've played the 4 Vermin Lord spell army. Really enjoyed that. Nagash, I really enjoyed the Nagash army. I'm working towards an Archaon army as well. And this army that I've got is kind of Hero Hammer, Bellacor, Vermin Lords, Kairos, like big powerful heroes. But that's where all the fun rules are in big powerful heroes. Like that's the interesting aspect to the game, and I think that you can get some really cool looking armies as well. It doesn't necessarily need to all be about just the most efficient thing. Sometimes extra flavors to armies make it a lot more interesting to play with and against. So that's my kind of stance on it anyway.
I think you should, if you fire through a couple of pictures of your army as well.
Yeah, will do. Yeah.
A little cycle of them up at the end of this little chat in the segue between you and one of our other co-hosts. We've got Scott.
Yeah, Scott's coming on. Yeah.
A bit of a different take on list writing. It'll be interesting to get through.
Yeah, no, I'm quite interested to hear how Scott writes lists as well, because maybe he needs to take a leaf out of my book and play some more Netlists.
I think I'll be halfway between the two. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing how you do as well, because you do really well with your lists.
I got the KO have arrived now.
Oh, no.
Them today, so they're looking pretty good. The ogres are ready to go. I've got a variety of different things. Nothing that's ultra competitive, but I think when I was talking, I was saying some similar things to yourself, but one of mine was just saying that once you've got something, just keep playing it and playing it.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Badly get beaten. Just learn a couple of lessons. Yeah. Avoid making the same mistakes twice. Play on what you find out is good. And even a mediocre list, you'll perform above average if you stick at it. Yeah. You'll never climb to the very top and win loads of stuff with it unless you've got something very, very good. And you're very, very good. But if you stick with the same thing, you'll definitely punch above your weight. I think if you
100%.
You stick with it. So.
With the Deepkin last year, I played over 100 games in a 4-month period, and it definitely does make you play better. Might still not be your play style, but you can take what you've learned into other armies when you do find your play style. So yeah, you've got to play. I'm actually off to play tonight after this on TTS with JP, play testing armies for Northern Invasion. So no rest for the wicked.
Right, won't be those ones.
Yeah.
Right, well, thank you very much for that.
All
I've
right.
got Scott in the line, so I'll catch you soon. Cheers, man.
Catch you later.
So yeah, basically I was just saying to Nathan, we've been getting quite a few questions through the YouTube side of things. So just to introduce people, this is Scott. Scott is our original co-host of the Northern Invasion podcast. 2 strong years we've been at it now. So yeah, but we've got, in a month of having the YouTube side of things, we've got 200 and something subscribers and 12,000 video watches and all this nonsense, but we get a lot more comments and questions through there, it seems. And there's a big difference between the people who listen to that and the people who listen to the podcast, because I think that from the feeling I get, and because we know from the engagement we've had, the people who listen to the podcast seem to be a bit more tournament focused, whereas the people who are watching on YouTube are, digging out battle reports and things. And so a lot of them seem to be learning how to play. They might never have even played before. So they were asking questions about how to write lists, and so I thought it'd be interesting to go to a variety of different types of players, going from the hobbyist through to I don't know, the filthmongers, and just to get a feel for what you do. If there's a process, if there's something, any advice for people, or what do you do when you're going to write a list, Scott?
So I was thinking about this, and I was even going to make some notes, and I haven't done because
No,
I'm shambles. So I'm just going to wing it. But so most of my games are tournament games. I do play some non-tournament games, but they're generally warm-up for tournament games. So there's very little games that aren't with a tournament in mind. So it's generally tournament-focused lists. Occasionally, just a random game comes up, and I might take something a bit more random. But yeah, so we're talking about tournament lists. How do I go about that, or writing any list in general? What I'd like to say I do is I open my battle tome, and if it's a new battle tome, you get the wonderful smell. You've not looked at any leaks on WhatsApp chats or Facebook or anything, and you absorb it completely from start to finish for the first time. Identify the filthy combinations and the subtle nuances of the battle tome that the writers have put so much hard work into, and beautifully craft a list thereof. That's not actually what happens in real life. More often than not, I come to it a bit later than the chats have chewed it up and spat it out, and people like Nathan and Liam and co have worked out what's hot and what's not. And the internet's posted some lists and ranted and raved about it before any models are even released. So, and that tends to put me off sometimes. So, yeah, I try not to go for the new things straight away, and let it just kind of float along for a little bit. And that also helps because I'm a lazy bugger, and that way that when you come back to the book a few months later, let you come back to a box of models that you've put in the loft. You come back to it a few years later, and you bring it out again, and test the waters, see what's out there. I tend to go and look what lists have people written. They've broken the seal already. I do like to have a competitive list in mind, but I'm not one to build the hyper filth. I don't think I've ever brought hyper filth to an event. It's not all about the list anyway. It's about the person as well. If I did bring hyper filth, I wouldn't go 5-0. I'd probably go 3-2. So yeah, well, I'm waffling here, but I tend to take the temperature, look on the internet, look on the various. There's loads of things out there. I'm not one for YouTube. I've never quite got into YouTube yet. I must be too old. The kids watch YouTube.
There's a button. Check your tele remote. There's a button. I don't even have to log up my computer or go on my phone. I just press the big button on my tele.
I tend to consume podcasts a lot more. So podcasts are a good source. There's loads of podcasts out there. There's loads of good ones just now, not including ours. And there's loads of competitive ones out there. There's loads of ones that you can, get you directed onto lore to get the juices flowing. We talked about this in the last podcast, didn't we? What gets your juices flowing? Well, it can be a list, it can be a podcast, it can be playing a game, it can be seeing a model. So yeah, I try to write lists or copy lists initially that are pretty competitive in mind. They're not just random stuff thrown together. I don't like just to copy it. I'll try and put a wee twist on it. That may be detuning it slightly, but so be it. I'd rather take something I like and you feel you've had a little bit of input into it, but it might detune it a little bit. And I try to write lists or modify lists that are already written with models that I like in mind. It's about the models, if it's saying to run, I don't know, looking at my desk here, what can I find? Not much. I've just had to tidy up. But the most recent list, the Bone Reapers list, it was Petrifex, albeit post. By the time I got around to doing it, post Petrifex nerf. There's lots of good things in that book, but I had a 6 and a 3 of Stalkers in there because I wanted to run the models. I think they're amazing models. They're also, another reason is that they're very quick to paint. Those ones, there's 9 models probably takes as long as doing 20 or whatever, or much longer than doing a 20 Mortek guard. So, sorry, much shorter than doing 20 Mortek guard. So kills 2 birds with 1 stone. They're quite good. They're not top tier. Blah blah blah. So it suits me. I like the models. Not quite top tier.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when it fails, I've got an excuse. I'm not running Change Host or anything like that.
Like your flayers though, you had like the Flayer army, like blister skin sort of stuff, way before.
Yeah,
well,
that was
first spec.
It was, yeah, it was first spec. It was pre Gristlegore and all those nuances to FEC. So it was just a formation dead watch. So that was just cool. I'd seen it. I should say that came about because my other source of talking about lists is generally with Rich. He's always one for chatting about lists and writing lists and blah blah. He does it for 40k, he does it for AoS. We do it for X-Wing. It's all sorts of just little chats about that. So we bounce most lists backwards and forwards with him. He's got a good eye for it. And that came about from just chatting to him, and that was with the first Six Nations in mind. So that was trying to be competitive, albeit it's a complete different world back then. My God.
Well, I took a Dreadmore to that.
Yeah. No, you had your curious ogre list, which was good. Had plenty of teeth in it.
Yeah.
And the element of surprise, which is a nice thing. Which ultimately, I would love to be able to write a list with the element of surprise in it, something original and unique. I think it's getting harder and harder these days because there's so much more chatter about it, so much more. I think people doing it, and I think it's more and more difficult to write a unique list.
I think to do that though, you do have to sit with the book, explore some synergies, and work out your own strategy that you're gonna play. And I mean, a lot of people will overlook it if one big list jumps out like Petrifex. I mean, there must be so many little tricksy lists in that book that are going to take people by surprise if you turn up at the table and like, oh, what's that?
Yeah, I think there is. And just now I've got an urge to do some dinosaurs and flicking through that book. And obviously people talk about the skink side of things and the Starborn side of things, but the big angry dinosaurs are on the other side of the book, and that's got me interested in that. But there's lots of tricks. Listen to another podcast. It was I think it's YouTube. He does it on as well. The AoS coach.
Oh yeah.
He was talking to a Texan guy about coalesced armies and talking about all the different things you can do with the bound endless spells. And I've not gone anywhere near any of that stuff yet. So there's so many layers that suddenly things become good because they're a bound endless spell. Because you've got sole control over it. So it's so there's loads of little layers. I've never had the time or the energy or the commitment to sort of peel back the layers and get right into a book. And
yeah, I think with me the reason I can't run a net list as people sort of, and there's nothing against it. I think some of the top players do that, and I know Nathan and Liam, who are probably a lot more, well, they are a lot more competitive than us. One of the first things they do is they do scrutinize everybody else's like winning lists, and they'll either use it or adapt it slightly and use it. And they're so fast at churning out armies. One of my issues is that I am so slow at painting, and I get distracted by other things, and I'm generally a couple of years behind the curve. I tend to just buy models I like or a big bunch of stuff and then slowly chip at it and work on it. And then if a new book comes out, I try and make the best list I can out of what I've got built. Or I'll just come up with my own thing. I don't think I've ever been on an internet, to be honest. On an internet. I've never done that and actually looked at winning lists and thought, right, I'm going to use. I've never done it.
Right.
I've always looked at the book, mate, and I've sat there and I've not come up with something genius, but I thought, oh, they look pretty cool. Oh, that's good. I like that model. And then, that works like that with that. And then I build a list around something that's, I mean, even when I did Sylvaneth and stuff, there was no Tree Lord Ancient, there was no Alariel, there was no 9 sides or whatever. And even though I was building something that was supposed to be competitive for that Six Nations in Wales that year, it was still my take on it. And I don't know, I think I'm too slow to actually do it that way, mate. I just, unless I buy an army, and
Yeah.
I've never bought an army. I've recently I've had an army painted, which is, oh my god, I've reached a certain age where I can do that, and it's glorious.
I'm thinking about that as well now, actually. So.
I think that's the thing. I could get something on a table though. Is get some. I just don't have the time or the skill or the speed to do it.
Yeah. So that's made me think about a couple of things. So I do look for patterns in I love looking at tournaments when they release a bunch of lists. Not necessarily ours because we know all the guys and everything else, but we know what's coming. But the tournaments around the world, around the country, if you get a good set of lists, I love getting my teeth into them. Tabletop.to, you can peruse lists in there. That's great. And I like looking for patterns. I do it I've done it in my jobs and stuff. Is working in spreadsheets, looking at data and stuff, and you can see AoS Dan, New Zealand, what's his name? AoS Shorts. He does all these kind of screenshots of spreadsheets where he's picked out patterns, and I love all that. That's great because that helps you see the sort of things. But ultimately, what I love in a list, and I didn't say this earlier, is I don't like spam as much. Okay, you can see I ran so many flares, but that's different. When I'm building a list or buying an army just from the website, I like to take what I call a sampler list, one of everything, which these days actually turns out pretty well because I think that's how Games Workshop design the book sometimes. Is it's not about 10 of something and 3 of something else. There are lists out there that do that, but quite often you can get a lot of mileage out of a range of things, different things, which helps them sell models obviously as well. But that's what I like in an army list is a variety of stuff.
No. So, and what are your plans then? So what's the next big one from you?
Well, I'm looking at
Seraphon then.
The Seraphon. I bought myself some Seraphon for my birthday. I think I've owned about 2 or 3 Seraphon armies over the years of various vintage I've bought from people and never quite got around to doing it properly. But this time it's a lot newer and I'm going to build it properly and just. The boy loves the dinosaurs obviously as well, so it's kind of a joint venture there.
Yeah.
But I'll build it with some filth in mind as well, of course. But I've got some corn sitting here as well. We talked about as well before. I'd like to get some, a few bloodthirsters. Obviously not the same one. One of every one. That's the way you do it. I get it. I'm not going to spam 4 of the same. No, that's not me.
All the insensate rage.
No.
Nice.
One of each.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
So that's, but it changes every week. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm like you say, I'm so slow at getting things done. It's a week or 2 later. The gaze has gone into something else.
Yeah.
Which has been lit by some random urge. It's looking at lists, looking at photos, whatever. So I'm just a butterfly that way.
Well, that KO list that I bought and Liam painted for me, thanks Liam, that's arrived today and I've unpacked it and it's great.
Cool.
The points drop, it's now only 1730 points. Well, I get another thing to it, but I'm still 180 points short, so I'm going for Everblaze Comet and an extra command point. Sticking the Comet in a bottle, just because I'm shy on the points, so that'll be interesting. That's going to be different for me, a very different sort of army. But it's not a filth list again. I really liked the idea of that escort wing, so it's just 2 gun haulers and a frigate, 10 thunderers, which is 1 formation, and then 20 arcanauts and 5 heroes. So should be alright. Oh, and 6 Endrin riggers. But yeah, should be alright. Bit of fun.
Yeah, I really don't know much about KO. That's another book I've never got to grips with.
I've never had a shooting army, so
yeah.
But they've got loads of redeploy, which is a thing I do like, and I think that Gunhaulers being battle line and being able to redeploy could be quite interesting with this year's set of scenarios. But I don't think I'll ever take them to a tournament. I've played against them at a couple of tournaments, and I don't want to do that to people.
That'll be good. Fun. Interesting.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'll play them up here. I'll play them against Eric's bloody Bloodthirsters. So, well, thanks a lot for that. I'm going to put a couple more folk together and just And it's interesting to see the different processes people go through.
Yeah, I mean, mine's a bit more random. It doesn't achieve the best results in terms of tournaments, but if you want that, speak to Liam and Nathan.
Well, the thing is, it's what keeps you happy and interested, I think, as well, isn't it? There's no point chasing wins and building an army you're not going to enjoy playing, that you're not going to have any sort of emotional investment in, because otherwise well, I don't know. Unless you really, I mean, there are some people out in the tournament scene I know who have a different army at every tournament, and it's sold before they've even driven home, and fair play to them. I mean, the amount of models they get through and they produce is phenomenal. But I don't like that. I'm too slow. I'm a ponderous old man.
I would agree, yeah. And I've lost way more games than I've won, so that's not a reason to sell an army. Just because you lost a game.
No. Anyway, well, thank you very much, and we'll catch up shortly. We've got Northern Invasion in 2 weeks, and I'm sure we'll do a podcast before then. Go through all these lovely lists.
Better get that list written, I suppose.
Yeah, 2 days. 2 days.
I know what I'm taking.
Good stuff. Right, cheers anyway, Scott.
Right.
See you later, sir. I'm going to press stop.
Hi there. My name's Kevin, and Stu has asked me to say a few words about how I approach list building. He thinks I've got a unique way of list building. I can sum up my normal approach in a single word: spam. One of the great things about AoS, something that was much more difficult in Warhammer Fantasy Battle and is next to impossible in modern 40k with its anti-spam rules, is that aside from a limit on your leaders and your battle line, and within the limits of your points, there's very little limiting how many of a single unit that you can take, as long as you have the points and the will to paint the unit over and over again. This has led me to such armies as the Gorefist, Gordrak and 24 Pigs, the 200 Plague Monks, although painting those broke me, the last year's all-shooty Judicators and Castigators list, which was awful. Even the Max Vermin Lord Skaven army, just as many Vermin Lords as you can fit in. The 30 Evocator Gav Bomb, that was an exercise in spam. Even the Double Cunning Ruck army I've just painted is an exercise in spam. To a lesser extent, spamming heroes earlier in AoS. Right back at the start, I bought 3 Lord Castellants when they were pretty much one of the best things in the game. And that was some of the most successful times I've had at AoS. So in short, for me, the ability to spam whatever I like is one of Age of Sigmar's unique selling points, and one which gets easier with almost every new release, as the newer books allow crazier and crazier battle line that allows ever more min-maxing, things like steam tanks as battle line, gun haulers, Stonehorns, Thundertusks, Terrorgeists. I think you can do a 10 steam tank list now with the recent points drops. Anyway, thanks to Stu for asking me to just run through my list building process. Spam. Cheers.
Okay, well, there you have it. Just a couple of thoughts from a couple of people, myself, Scott and Nathan from the podcast, and the master of spam, Kev. We have got a couple more interviews lined up if this is well received, or if people are interested. We've got a chat lined up with the current reigning Northern Master, and a couple of other people. I've been lucky enough over the last couple of years to do quite a bit of travelling for games. So I've met people from overseas and from the wider UK as well, I suppose. So if people want to hear any more or listen to the thoughts of people as they put together their lists, stick a comment in, like it or whatever, and if you've got any ideas or suggestions of what you'd like to listen to or you'd like us to think about or discuss, just do that. We're going to stick this on. This is part 1. There will be a part 2 that's coming, as I say, maybe future episodes as well, but I'll stick this also on as a mini podcast episode. So for those of you listening on the podcast, if you want to see our our excited and made for radio faces chatting about stuff, give it a look over there. And if you're watching for the first time on YouTube and want to listen a little bit more to us drone on and chat about stuff to do with the hobby, and mainly focusing on the tournament scene and competitive play, give us a listen on the podcast. Well, thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed it. Tonight is Battle Report night for us, so we've got a cacophony of 4 Bloodthirsters facing off against a Lariel in Winterleaf. I'm not taking part in today's matchup. It's going to be Eric against another person from Orkney who's got Sylvaneth, Liam. They're going to have a game, but I have got a game lined up for next week, and the Caradron Overlords are going to make a debut on the channel against Spadge's Slanesh force. No doubt he'll be trying out his army for Northern Invasion, as that'll be the week before. Anyway, thanks for joining us. See you soon.